Living large, living loud, stacking paper high, chasing dreams all the way to the sky. From rags to riches in the blink of an eye, friendships in the vault where the old bonds die. Parties on rooftops, crystals in the dark, lost in the glitz till we miss the mark. Gold turned to chains, heavy on the heart, the price of a wish tearing us apart. Crew, we just hit the jackpot, stacks money taller, now we on the top of the map. But grease slid in like a police trap. Trust broke down, can't avoid that cap. Friends turn foes, plot a twist, no script. Lies and blood, bills ain't clean, they drip. Versace steering wheel, now we in for a trip. We used to be friends, but our bond just ripped. Gone. We hit, 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 we hit.
Chapter 19, Aftermath. As the piercing sound of sirens echoed through the quiet night, the chief skidded to a stop in his patrol car, jumping out and immediately drawing his weapon. The flashing red and blue lights bathed the scene in an ominous glow. His heart pounded as he saw Antiriel kneeling beside Tara's lifeless body, her hands trembling, covered in blood. "Put your hands up," the chief yelled, his voice commanding and firm. Antiriel, her face streaked with tears, slowly raised her hands, still sobbing uncontrollably. The blood on her hands and clothes glistened under the harsh lights, making the scene even more horrifying. I just got here. I swear, I found her like this," Antiriel stammered through her tears, her voice shaking with fear and desperation. "I didn't do anything. Please, you have to believe me, officer." The chief moved cautiously toward her, his eyes darting between her and Tara's motionless body on the ground. He could see the pool of blood that had formed around Tara, seeping into the cracks of the pavement, and the sight made his stomach churn. He quickly glanced at Antiriel, noticing the blood on her clothes, and felt a wave of suspicion wash over him. "Stay right there," he ordered, his tone stern but less aggressive. He needed to control the situation carefully. He grabbed Antiriel by the arm and guided her to his patrol car, opening the back door and motioning for her to enter. "I need to get to the bottom of this. Sit tight," he said as he closed the door on her. Antiriel complied, too shocked and distraught to argue, her body shaking as she watched the chief return to the scene. She saw him take out his radio through the window to call in the report. "Dispatch, I need backup and an ambulance at my location immediately. I've got a female victim down, possible homicide." After finishing the call, the chief approached Tara's body, his expression hardening as he took in the grim reality. He put on a pair of gloves, kneeling beside Tara to check for any signs of life, but it was clear she was gone. He searched her pockets, her hands, and around her body, looking for the evidence he knew Tara had promised him, but it wasn't there. Frustration gnawed at him as he scanned the area again, hoping to find something that would lead him to the needed proof. Nothing. The chief's mind raced. His eyes narrowed as he glanced back at Antiriel, still in the patrol car, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. He couldn't help but think that she had something to do with this. If not the murder itself, then the disappearance of the evidence. He had been so close, and now it seemed slipping through his fingers. Just as he was about to walk back to Antiriel, the wail of approaching sirens grew louder, and within moments, backup and an ambulance arrived on the scene. The chief clenched his jaw, frustrated that he had to play it cool before the other officers. He needed to figure out where that evidence had gone, but now he had to maintain appearances. As the paramedics approached, the chief stepped back, overseeing them lift Tara's lifeless body onto a stretcher. Another paramedic opened the back door of his patrol car and gently helped Antiriel out, leading her toward the ambulance to be checked out. She was still shaking, her face pale, her eyes darting around as if trying to make sense of what had just happened. The chief walked over to the ambulance as Antiriel was being examined. "Miss," he began, his voice calm but laced with an underlying tension. "I need you to come down to the station for questioning. We need to get to the bottom of what happened here tonight." Antiriel looked up at him, her eyes pleading. "I didn't do anything. I swear." As the tension simmered in the room, the men gathered around the poker table at Alex's house. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and uneasy glances. The chips clinked softly as they placed their bets, but the usual banter was subdued, overshadowed by distrust and suspicion. As the laughter died, Mario's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, frowning at the unknown number. He hesitated momentarily before picking it up, standing up, and walking to the corner of the room for some privacy. "Hello?" The voice on the other end spoke rapidly, and Mario's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "What? What do you mean? Where are you?" His voice was urgent, his eyes wide with disbelief. The other men at the table fell silent, watching Mario intently as he absorbed the news. He listened for another moment, then nodded, his face pale. "Okay, I'm on my way." Mario ended the call and turned back to the group, his face a mask of shock and fear. "Tara has been murdered," he announced, his voice hollow. "The police are questioning Antirial." The room fell into stunned silence, the gravity of the situation hitting them all at once. The poker game was instantly forgotten as the men tried to process the news. Alex was the first to break the silence, his voice shaky. "Bullshit." Mario shook his head, still trying to wrap his mind around it. "I'm serious. I don't know all the details. I know that I need to get to Antirial ASAP." The men were shocked as they grabbed their phones to call their spouses. Ladarius says under his breath, but loud enough for Emmanuel to hear, "First, Anike, and now Tara. Well, damn, Mr. Mayor, how you gonna solve this?" As Emmanuel looks at Ladarius with a look of revenge in his eyes. While calling Olivia, Alex notices this and says, "Cut the crap!" The poker game was abandoned as they gathered their belongings, each man preparing to head out. Jason turned to Ladarius, his expression tense. Hey, can you give me a ride home?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease that lingered in the air. Ladarius nodded, his mind racing with thoughts of the night's events. "Yeah, man, come on," he replied, already heading towards the door. Emmanuel and Trey exchanged a look, their silent communication evident. Without a word, they headed out together, both knowing they had much to discuss, but understanding that now was not the time. Still reeling from the phone call, Mario was the last to leave. He made a beeline for the door, focusing only on getting to Antirial at the precinct as quickly as possible. His mind was a blur of worry and confusion, but one thought was clear. He needed to be there for her. Alex pulled out his phone and redialed Olivia's number as they approached the front door. The phone rang, but there was no answer. He frowned, his concern deepening. "I hope she's okay, but I'm getting worried. You guys let me know when you make it home, all right?" Mario was already in his car, speeding toward the precinct. He could barely think straight, the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he dialed his daughter's number. "Hey, sweetie," he greeted her, trying to keep his voice calm despite the urgency he felt. "I'm going to be home later than I expected, okay?" "Okay, Dad," she replied, her voice curious. "Is everything all right?" Mario hesitated for a moment, glancing at the road ahead. "Yeah, just something came up. Is your mom there?" "Yeah, she just walked in," she answered. "Good," Mario said, relieved. "I'll see you when I get back. Be safe, okay?" "I will. Love you, Dad," she said, her tone light. "Love you too," Mario replied, hanging up the phone and gripping the steering wheel tighter. The closer he got to the precinct, the more his thoughts raced. He needed to know what was going on with Antirial, understand what had happened to Tara, and figure out how they would all get through this. There was no silence in the car as Jason was recapping the night. "Damn, I wish I would have gotten with her before she died." Ladarius looks at Jason, confused, and says, "What the fuck did you just say? She just got killed, and that's what's on your mind." And here I am thinking Ashley is the crazy one. "And speaking of Ashley, you never got back to me about her," Jason says. Ladarius, eyes focused on the road ahead, gave a slight nod. "You're right, I never did." He paused, weighing his words carefully. "Listen, Jason, I don't want to cause any unnecessary drama, but Ashley and Trey, they've got something fishy going on. They seem to know each other outside of our circle, and it's not just casual. I wouldn't trust Dude at all." Jason's brow furrowed as he absorbed Ladarius's words. A sense of unease settled in his gut, but he masked it with a calm demeanor. "Good to know," he replied, his voice measured. "I'll keep an eye out. Thanks for the heads up." After a few moments, Jason, trying to shift the conversation to something lighter, asked, "So, Are you going to vote for the other candidate? Ladarius shrugged slightly, his expression thoughtful. I'm not sure yet. The other candidate said some things I liked. Emmanuel's got some okay points, but they do not benefit me. A lot's been going on, and I want to ensure my needs are met, you know? Jason nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. Yeah, I get that. There's a lot at stake this time around. But Emmanuel is our friend, rich friend at that. Wouldn't he be looking out for his people? Ladarius shook his head. As they neared Jason's house, Ladarius called Kesey again. The phone went straight to voicemail and made him a bit worried about what was going on. He looked over at Jason and asked, "Have you heard from Ashley?" Jason responded, "Nope." As the car came to a smooth stop in front of Emmanuel's house, he turned to Trey, his eyes dark with determination. "I need that deed done, Trey," he said, his voice low but firm. "The sooner, the better." Trey leaned back slightly, considering Emmanuel's words. He could see the desperation in Emmanuel's eyes, the kind that only comes when a man is at the end of his rope. Trey's expression remained neutral as he replied, "Okay, that can be done, but I want $100 million wired to my security firm. Make it look legit, or you will have even bigger problems on your hands." Emmanuel's eyes widened slightly. $100 million? Trey nodded, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Yes, $100 million. I mean, you thought I was going to kill someone for you for free? No, sir. That's not how this goes." Emmanuel stared at Trey for a long moment, weighing his options. He knew Trey had him in a corner and there was no easy way out. Finally, after a tense silence, he nodded. "Whatever it takes," he said, his voice tight. "It will take some time to arrange that transfer, but I want him gone as soon as possible." Trey leaned in slightly, his voice low and menacing. "Don't worry about him anymore. You have to deal with me now." Emmanuel's gaze hardened, but he said nothing more. He opened the car door and stepped out, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on his shoulders. Without looking back, he walked toward his house, his mind racing with the implications of the deal he had just struck. As he entered the house, the quiet of the night seemed almost suffocating. He moved cautiously, eyes scanning the darkened rooms for any sign of Kim. She hadn't picked up the phone when he called earlier, and he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was wrong. He made his way to the bedroom. As he reached the door, he heard the soft sound of snoring from inside. He slowly pushed the door open and saw Kim lying on the bed, completely knocked out from exhaustion. The stress of the campaign had taken its toll on her, and it was evident in the way she slept, deep and undisturbed by the turmoil surrounding them. Emmanuel closed the door quietly behind him, feeling relief and dread. For a moment, he allowed himself to hope that everything would work out, that he wouldn't have to make the unthinkable decision to turn her in. But just as that thought crossed his mind, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw his assistant's name flashing on the screen. The sound of the phone vibrating stirred Kim from her sleep. She groggily opened her eyes and looked around the room with confusion. Emmanuel answered the call, keeping his voice low. "Yeah? Did you get that final report I sent you earlier?" His assistant's voice came through the line, calm and steady. "Yes," Emmanuel replied, his tone clipped. "We'll talk more tomorrow." He ended the call and turned his attention to Kim, sitting in bed, rubbing her eyes. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice heavy with sleep. "Nobody," Emmanuel replied, trying to keep his voice casual. Kim yawned and stretched her arms above her head. "What time is it?" "A little after midnight," Emmanuel said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. He watched her momentarily, debating whether to ask about the party. Finally, he decided to get straight to the point. "Kim, what happened at the party tonight?" Kim frowned, trying to recall the night through her haze of exhaustion. "Tara and Antiriel got into it with Michelle," she said slowly. "It got pretty heated, and everyone ended up leaving early. Why? What happened?" Emmanuel felt the weight of the news he was about to share. "Tara's dead," he said quietly, watching as the words sank in. Kim's eyes widened in shock. "What? How? When?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "They found her body at the restaurant," Emmanuel explained, his tone grave. "They think Antiriel killed her. She's being questioned now." Kim's face drained of color as she absorbed the news. "But how did this happen? Why would she want to kill Tara?" Emmanuel's heart ached as he looked at his wife, knowing the truth was far more complicated than she could imagine. He wanted to protect her from the harsh reality, but knew the time for secrets was running out. Why would a person just randomly kill their best friend? Kim says. Emmanuel shakes his head. I guess that's an answer. Me and you both want to know. A few hours later in the early morning, Alex stirred in his chair in the living room, the soft glow of the television casting faint shadows around the room. He had dozed off, still fully clothed after the chaotic night, and the events of the previous hours weighed heavily on his mind. With a groggy sigh, he stood up, stretching his stiff muscles, and went to the bedroom to check on Olivia. The early morning light filtering through the curtains dimly lit the bedroom. Olivia lay peacefully in bed, her face serene and unaware of the storm that had unfolded while she slept. Alex hesitated momentarily, not wanting to disturb her, but knowing he had to. He gently shook her shoulder. Olivia, he whispered, his voice rough with exhaustion. Wake up! Olivia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked a few times, adjusting to the light and the sight of Alex standing over her. What's wrong? She mumbled, still half asleep. Alex took a deep breath, his expression severe. Anterio was arrested for murder last night. The words hit Olivia like a bucket of cold water. She sat up abruptly, her heart pounding. What? Who did she kill? Mario? Mary? Alex shook his head, his face grim. She killed Tara. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Tara? Oh my God, Alex, what the hell happened? Alex gave her a stern look, his eyes searching hers for answers. That's what I want to know. What the fuck happened at that party last night? Olivia felt a cold dread settle in her stomach as she tried to piece together the events. The night had been tense, filled with veiled insults and simmering tension, but murder? She never imagined it would come to that. Everything was so tense, but murder? I didn't see it coming, Alex. We were talking, and then things got out of hand, but I never thought it would go that far. Mary woke up to the morning news blaring from the television in the living room, the anchor's voice filled with a mix of shock and intrigue. As she slowly sat up in bed, she reached for the remote to turn up the volume. Her curiosity piqued. The words, "Popular Socialite's Death," flashed across the screen, and a slow, satisfied smile spread across her face as she listened to the report's details. She glanced over at the small pile of items she had taken from Tara the night before, now spread out on her bed like trophies. Jewelry, a phone, and a few personal trinkets. Reminders of the woman who had once been a thorn in her side. Mary picked up one of the rings, turning it over in her fingers, and laughed softly. The bitch got what was coming to her, she muttered, her voice dripping with satisfaction. A soft knock on her door pulled her out of her reverie. She quickly stuffed the items into a drawer and composed herself as her daughter peeked inside the room. Mom, have you heard from Dad? He's still not home, and I'm getting worried, her daughter asked, concern evident in her voice. Mary turned to face her, her expression carefully neutral. No, I haven't heard from him, she replied calmly. But I'm sure he's okay. You know how your father can be, probably caught up in some business and lost track of time. Her daughter nodded, though the worry didn't entirely leave her face. Yeah, you're probably right. I'll text him again. Mary watched her daughter leave the room, her thoughts quickly returning to the events of the night before. She felt a sense of grim satisfaction wash over her. Tara had been dealt with, and now Mary could start planning to get rid of the rest of the other bitches and get her man back. Michelle woke up to the blaring sound of her phone buzzing repeatedly on the nightstand. Groggy and disoriented, she reached for it, squinting at the screen. Her notifications were filled with headlines, all pointing to one shocking piece of news. Local business owner and socialite found dead. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at the words, trying to process what she was reading. Tara was dead? Panic gripped her for a moment, but then a strange, unsettling thought crept into her mind. Maybe you got what you deserved, Tara. Michelle wasn't proud of the thought, but it lingered, casting a shadow over her initial shock. She considered calling Anterior and checking on her, but she hesitated, her finger hovering over the call button. Instead, she decided that she was going to reach out to her therapist. Chris had woken up dizzy and disoriented, the early morning light filtering through the curtains. As he reached for his phone on the nightstand, he absently turned on the TV, which was already tuned to the news. The headline that flashed on the screen made him sit up abruptly. Local business owner found dead, suspected murder. Rubbing his eyes, Chris focused on the screen, trying to take in the reality of the situation. His thoughts immediately jumped to his tense conversation with Michelle the previous night. Without hesitating, he grabbed his phone and texted her. Did you do what the fuck I think you did? When Chris's message popped on her screen, Michelle was just about to call her therapist. She stared at it momentarily and replied, "Damn. No, hey. Good morning, beautiful." Or nothing. She was alive when I left, and I left before everyone else did. Chris stared at the reply, trying to shake off the unease in his gut. Michelle's response was meant to be reassuring, but something still felt off. "I get why you're asking, but trust me, I didn't do anything. I was upset, but not that upset. I don't know, Chris. This whole situation is messed up." In the cold, sterile light of the interrogation room, Antiriel was slumped over the metal table, her exhaustion evident as sleep threatened to pull her under. The events of the night weighed heavily on her, each breath a reminder of the chaos and fear that had taken over her life. The door creaked open and the chief entered, his expression stern and unreadable. He closed the door quietly behind him, his gaze immediately shifting to the security camera in the corner. Without hesitation, he flipped a switch, cutting off the camera feed. The little red light blinked out, leaving the room in a heavy, suffocating silence. Antiriel stirred, her eyes fluttering open just in time to see the chief drop a thick folder onto the table with a resounding thud. The noise jolted her fully awake, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked up at him with a mix of confusion and fear. "I want my lawyer," Antiriel says. The chief's eyes were cold, calculating. "I thought you looked familiar," he said, his voice low and filled with menace. He opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table toward her. It was a picture of the group during their trip to Tokyo. Herself, Emmanuel, Kim, Tara, and others smiling for the camera. "How well do you know Emmanuel and Kim? Were you and Tara best friends? Did Tara tell you anything about me and what she was doing for me?" "Chief," she said, her voice shaky but firm, "I just found my best friend dead. Do you think I care about some shit y'all had going on?" The chief's face hardened, his patience wearing thin. In a flash of anger, he slammed his hand down on the table, the sound echoing through the small room like a gunshot. Antiriel jumped, her heart beating as she stared at him in shock. "Where is my damn evidence?" the chief growled, his voice low and dangerous. The intensity of his demand filled the room, the threat hanging in the air, leaving Antiriel trapped in a deadly game of secrets and lies, unsure of what move to make next. "If you do not tell me what I want to hear, I will make these charges stick." Antiriel knew she was innocent. But after everything that had happened, she thought about what Tara said about the meeting between Ladarius and Emmanuel. If that had something to do with her friend's death and her freedom, she wanted revenge. She looked at the chief and said, "Now that you mention it, I remember her telling me that Emmanuel and Ladarius had a meeting at her restaurant that did not end well. I haven't heard the tape, but she had her phone on her when I left. Now get me my damn lawyer." A few hours later that same morning, the rain had started, and Mario was startled awake by his phone buzzing. His eyes were fatigued as he fumbled to answer it, seeing Alex's name flash on the screen. "Hey," Mario croaked, rubbing his eyes and trying to shake off the grogginess. "Did you make it home?" Alex's voice came through the line, filled with concern. Mario sighed, glancing around the dimly lit parking lot he'd been in for hours. "Nah, I'm lying in the car in the parking lot. I called my lawyer, but she's slow as hell. Lori better be lucky, she's the best in the city." There was a pause on the other end before Alex spoke again, his tone a mix of understanding and resolve. "All right, man, listen, I can call the fellas, and we can come and get you and grab some breakfast nearby so you won't be too far from Antiriel. You don't need to be alone right now." Mario released a breath he didn't realize he was holding, grateful for the support. "Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Alex. I'll be here." "Okay, I will call the fellas now." Ladarius's doorbell rang, pulling him out of his thoughts. Damn, it must be another one of Kesey's online orders, he thought, rolling his eyes. She had a habit of ordering things and forgetting to mention it to him. With a sigh, Ladarius headed toward the door. As he opened it, a gust of cold wind blew in, bringing a downpour of rain that instantly dampened the front hallway. The delivery person, fully covered, face mask and all, stood there, drenched from head to toe, holding a package and shivering slightly from the cold. "Need a signature," the delivery person said, holding out the electronic device. Ladarius nodded and reached out to take the device. His phone started ringing in his pocket as he was about to sign. He paused for a slight second, instinctively reaching for his phone, but something caught his attention out of the corner of his eye, a glint of metal. Before he could fully react, a knife was thrust toward him. Ladarius attempted to dodge, but it was too late. The blade plunged into his lower abdomen, sending a searing pain through his body. In complete shock, Ladarius looked up at the delivery driver, his eyes wide with disbelief. The driver pulled down his face mask, revealing himself as Trey, a cold smirk playing on his lips. As Ladarius began to collapse, his strength fading fast, Trey leaned in close and whispered, "Emmanuel sends his regards." With that, Trey turned on his heel, calmly walking back to the delivery vehicle as if nothing had happened. He got in, started the engine, and sped off into the pouring rain, leaving Ladarius bleeding out on the doorstep. Just then, Kesey, oblivious to what had just transpired, came down the stairs, curious about the package delivery. There in the doorway was Ladarius, collapsing to his knees, blood pouring from his abdomen. Ladarius! Well, what an explosive chapter that was. You've just listened to another twist in the dark tale of We Hit. If your heart's racing and you're craving more, you know what to do. Smash that like button and hit subscribe. Things are about to get even bloodier, more deceitful, and thrilling. So stay with us and brace yourselves for the next chapter.
Wow.